We welcome in now NewsNation contributor and former aide to President George W. Bush, Denise Gitsham. Denise, it's always a treat to have you on the program. So we have seen progressive candidates on the left gaining steam in key swing states all across the U.S., Michigan, Wisconsin, notably. The response from Republicans thus far has been to invoke fears of socialism and for communism, and that did seem to be a savvy play out of the gate. But now, here are some of the numbers we're looking at. DDHQ polling showing that Democrat Senate candidate Abdul is pulling ahead of Republican Mike Rogers in a general. So what do you attribute to the apparent momentum we are seeing on the left now?
Yeah, you know what I attribute it to is Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is something I think Republicans need to take better notice of. Whenever people feel like they're not able to have the life that they're promised, to experience the American dream, when affordability is an actual crisis for folks, I feel like whatever party's in charge tends to minimize it because they can't take full responsibility for what's going on. And I think Republicans need to recognize that affordability is the only issue on the ticket. You can talk around everything else. You can slam socialism, all of which are merited. I'm the most anti-socialist person you will ever meet. I think it's incredibly destructive and it's just stupid. But if Republicans and others who are campaigning right now, whether they're centrist Democrats or Republicans along any part of the spectrum, don't talk about the one thing that people care about the most, which is whether or not they can afford groceries and rent, then they're completely missing the boat. And that's where I think Francesca and El Sayed have really tapped into the heartbeat of what is at issue in this election.
Right. They are talking to the working class and some of the fears and their concerns that they are experiencing right now. So much of the frustration with voters does seem to be centered around affordability. As you and I have talked about, this is also tied very closely to the war in Iran. The Vice President J.D. Vance, who's involved with negotiations happening now, said this Saturday about where things stand.
We're really in the middle of the game here. This thing is not over. It's obviously not at the beginning. We're in the middle of the game, and we're applying a whole host of tools, diplomatic, economic, military tools, to ensure that we get the best outcome for the American people. I feel quite confident we will get there, but we're still a bit in the middle of the game.
So the middle of the game, that would suggest that this conflict drags out through the midterms. Yeah. And that is a real problem, as you know, for Republicans, because there isn't widespread support for this war. We've talked about the frustration so many Americans feel over the lack of a clear, concise message from the president and his administration during this conflict. So what communication tweaks would you suggest, especially with that freshly stated timeline from the vice president?
That's a great question. And, having come out of the Bush White House where message discipline was king, it's frustrating to watch this White House struggle so much with it. Look, that must have been such a hard thing for J.D. Vance to admit, that we're in the middle of the war when the president has promised that we were just weeks away or days away from a conclusion, a positive resolution. There doesn't seem to be an end to this war. That doesn't mean that I don't think the reasons that we got in were justified. I think that taking out Khomeini and doing all the things we had to do against a country that had waged asymmetric warfare against America for nearly 50 years wasn't necessarily a bad idea. I just think that if they had leveled with the American people from the beginning and explained how hard a slog this would be, they might be in a better position today. I think being honest with the American people is always the right move, and I wish this administration would do that more forthrightly.
We have about 30 seconds left, but I think that's incredibly astute. And we have this new poll. It's out of Marquette Law School, and it says 75% of Americans say they don't believe the cost of this war has been worth it. How damaging is that reality for Republicans if there isn't a significant shift in perception come November?
I think it's been incredibly damaging, and I'm not sure there's much of a timeline left, no matter, how far out the midterms are, and they're not. Early voting starts very soon in some states. There's just no way to turn this boat around at this point, and I think that Republicans need to accept that and either pivot in the last 2 months where people are really focusing on this election more so than, all summer long. They need to start talking about the issues that really matter to Americans, and that's affordability. Whatever you say about the Iran war, you got to focus on affordability. Don't prosecute issues that aren't going to move the needle on Election Day.
Right, and the pain so many Americans are feeling.
Right.
Denise Gitsham, wonderful to have you, as it always is. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly.